Over on Jaguar Gatorade, a new college football video is out. In this video, we talk about the dumbest voter in the history of the AP poll, and how he sent in a ballot that was so bad and so baffling that he got fired for it. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch. And now, on with our feature presentation. The year is 2010, and the Carolina Panthers are feeling like they're on cloud 9. Because in the second round of the NFL draft, they got the steal of the draft according to many experts, when they somehow got Notre Dame quarterback Jimmy Clausen to slip to pick number 48. Carolina pounced on that, ushering in a brand new era of football after 7 years of Jake Delhomme guiding the ship. The Panthers were getting one of the best passers in all of football, getting a guy that was 4th in the NCAA in completion percentage, 8th in passing touchdowns, and 4th in passing yards during his final season in 2009. They were getting a guy that threw 28 touchdowns and just 4 interceptions as a junior, being one of the most efficient passers in all of college football, with a remarkable 7-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. And people were so infatuated by him that not only were people pegging him as the next big star in the league, but infamously, ESPN draft expert Mel Kiper Jr. said that he would retire if Clausen wasn't a successful quarterback in the NFL. He was that confident in his abilities. Yeah, so much for that. Because everything about the Panthers in 2010 was nothing short of a disaster, with probably the biggest one of the bunch being Jimmy Clausen himself. In fact, he was so much of a disaster that I spoke about him and his awful rookie season in a previous video of mine, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And if things weren't already imploding before this, oh, they completely imploded after this game we're about to talk about today. Because in Week 14, the Carolina Panthers hosted the Atlanta Falcons in an NFC South matchup, and the game was so bad that afterwards, veteran wide receiver Steve Smith completely lashed out at his quarterback, criticizing him and his attitude, and causing a giant feud that had many questioning whether Clausen was even the slightest bit capable of leading a team. Because this is the story of the game that the Panthers played against the Falcons, and what led to the feud between franchise legend Steve Smith and franchise legendary bust Jimmy Clausen. Before I talk about the incident and the blow-up in question, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, how the game was going, and any previous incidents that the two men had with each other, because this was not exactly their first rodeo. It's December 12, 2010. It's Week 14 of the NFL season, and as we near the finish line, we have an NFC South battle on our hands between the Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons. This game was so big and so monumental for the Panthers that of the 75,000 seats at Bank of America Stadium, a whopping 50,000 of them were empty. Seriously, when you combine how poor the Panthers were playing and the terrible weather, it was estimated that just 25,000 fans walked through the turnstiles, to which head coach John Fox, who was a dead man walking at this point, said, "At 1-11 coming into today, it doesn't really surprise me. I can hardly blame our fans." And it's not hard to see why the fans didn't want to show up, seeing as the 1-11 Panthers were mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, were playing for nothing outside of a draft pick, and had an absolutely inept offense led by this man right here, Jimmy Clausen. By this point, Jimmy Clausen had played in 9 games, starting 6 of them. The Panthers were 0-6 in his starts, and it was primarily because Clausen was terrible. Entering this game against the Falcons, Clausen completed just 50% of his passes with 1 touchdown, 6 interceptions, and a passer rating of 55.3. If you look at every quarterback at this point to attempt at least 200 passes, of which there were 31, Derek Anderson of the Arizona Cardinals ranked 30th with a rating of 65.9. Clausen was more than 10 full points behind the next worst quarterback in football. He also had the lowest completion percentage by more than 1 percentage point, nearly 12 percentage points off the league-wide median, and had the fewest touchdown passes. The second lowest total among those to throw 200 passes was Derek Anderson with 7. Jimmy Clausen had 1. In other words, we weren't just talking about a bad rookie quarterback or a rookie that was struggling to find his footing. We were talking about, at least compared to his peers, one of the worst rookie quarterbacks of all time. He was pretty much unplayable, and to say that he was a big reason why the Panthers were losing games would be a massive understatement. Already, tensions between the very bad Jimmy Clausen and the very good Steve Smith were brewing. In the first start that Clausen made against the Cincinnati Bengals, the Panthers lost 20-7, with Clausen playing a pretty poor game, going 16 for 33, completing less than 48% of his passes, throwing no touchdowns and 1 interception, and fumbling the ball 3 times, with Clausen losing 2 of those fumbles. And during the game, tensions got so heated that Smith was yelling at Clausen before being escorted away by a teammate and throwing a cup of Gatorade down in frustration. Smith tried to downplay this afterwards as best as he could, saying, "I was obviously frustrated and agitated. But sometimes, people think they know me better than I know myself. I think that's a joke, and I think the people that reported it are jokes." Clausen also tried to downplay it, saying, "There wasn't really anything between me and Steve. Like I told you after the game, it's just his competitiveness as a football player. He wants the ball. I think it's a good thing for your receivers to want the ball as much as they can get it." Okay, crisis averted for now. The two men, whether you want to believe it or not, diffused the situation for now. But by the time we got to this Falcons game a few months later, with the Panthers continuing to struggle on offense, and with Clausen continuing to look like garbage, oh man, there was no diffusing what was about to happen next. Because for the 25,000 fans that braved the cold to watch a one-win team play, they were treated to, well, quite honestly, I don't know what they were treated to, but it definitely wasn't football. It was one of those games where if you went, you weren't just demanding a refund. You were demanding that the Panthers actually pay you for having to sit through that suffering. Because when the final whistle sounded on this day in the NFC South rivalry, it was the Atlanta Falcons who emerged victorious by a final score of 31-10, and it didn't even feel all that close. But it wasn't just that the Falcons won by 21 points. We kind of expected that going in. The Falcons were 10-2. They were one of the best teams in the NFC. They were fighting for the number 1 seed, and they were favored by more than a touchdown to win it. Rather, it was the way that the Panthers lost this game that was absolutely infuriating to many. Because of the 25,000 fans that showed up for this game, it wouldn't shock me if half of them took a nap during this one. And honestly, I can't say that I would have blamed them. Once again, Jimmy Clausen was absolutely atrocious on offense. He finished the game with 107 yards passing, going 14 for 24 and completing just over 58% of his passes, while getting sacked 5 times for a loss of 31 yards, meaning that the Panthers had just 76 net passing yards all day on 29 passing plays, or an average of 2.6 yards per passing play. Oh, and he threw no touchdowns and an interception while posting a passer rating of 51.9. That sounds really bad, right? But don't worry, it gets worse. Because after the first 4 drives of the game, the Panthers had 1 yard of total offense. On their 6 drives in the first half, the furthest they got down the field was their own 36-yard line. For over 30 minutes, they legitimately could not cross their own 40-yard line at any moment. And the one play they did run past their own 30-yard line, when they got to the 36-yard line, Clausen got sacked. By the end of the first quarter, Clausen had 1 net passing yard, and the only reason it was that high was because of a 4-yard completion on 3rd and 17. By the end of the first half, thanks to some awful sacks and the longest pass of the day being a 6-yard pass on 3rd and 10, Clausen had -5 net passing yards. If you're watching this video right now, congratulations! In the first half of this game, you had more net passing yards than Jimmy Clausen did. But it gets even worse, because by the time the Falcons were up 24-7, and by the time they were leading it by 3 possessions late in the 3rd quarter, Clausen had -13 net passing yards. It took until 3 minutes and 52 seconds left in the 3rd quarter, when Clausen completed a 22-yard pass to David Geddes, for the Panthers to actually have positive net passing yards. That's how bad it was. Literally, for the first 41 minutes of the game, if you did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play, you would have more passing yards than the Panthers. You couldn't blame the defense for this one. Considering the fact that they were going up against one of the best offenses in football, they did all they could. The Panthers' defense was on the field for over 35 minutes. The Falcons only averaged 3.5 yards per carry. The defensive line got 3 sacks. The Falcons only had 200 net passing yards all day, and only completed 58% of their passes. And of the 4 touchdowns that the Falcons scored, 3 of them came with the team starting inside Carolina territory, thanks to some atrocious offense on the other side on Carolina's part. Really, the defense put up a valiant effort considering the circumstances. But because Jimmy Clausen was so bad, it didn't matter. And Clausen realized this, and realized that his poor play was costing his team the game. So afterwards, when the final whistle sounded, and the Falcons walked away victorious with a 31-10 dominant win, Clausen decided that it was a good idea to apologize for his poor performance. With that, he walked across the locker room, approached linebacker John Beeson, and apologized specifically to him for letting him down. As Clausen said afterwards on the apology to Beeson, "I don't feel that I'm playing to my level of capability that I expect from myself. I thought apologizing was the right thing to do." Now, on one hand, having your quarterback accept responsibility for his bad play and apologize seems like a good characteristic to have. You feel like you let the defense down, you feel like you let one of the best linebackers in football, who is taking you under his wing, down, and you feel like you're wasting a great season from him. Apologizing and letting him know that this play was unacceptable and that this season has not been how he wanted it to go seems like a good move, depending on what was said in the apology and how it came across. However, this was quite literally the only person that Clausen apologized to. He didn't apologize to any other teammates. He didn't apologize to the team. And he didn't apologize to players who actually shared the field with him, like his receivers or his offensive line. He apologized to John Beeson specifically, and that was it. It's like if you're working a job, you screwed up big time and cost the company a ton of money, and you issue one apology, and that apology is to the janitor. Like, it just seems bizarre, and to an extent, outright insulting, as though you didn't stop to think about everyone else that's been impacted by your poor play. It's almost worse than not giving an apology at all. And Steve Smith, who had 2 receptions for 17 yards and was having one of the worst seasons of his career because of Clausen, wasn't having any of it. Because by this point, he was done with Clausen. He was sick and tired of him and his attitude, and was completely confused as to why Beeson was the only guy to receive an apology, seeing as Clausen played offense and Beeson played defense. As Smith said, "I'm the last guy to tell anybody to be apologizing. But if you're going to apologize, you should apologize to people that are in the huddle with you. He has a lot to learn. He ain't at Notre Dame anymore, that's for sure." Smith then continued, somewhat sarcastically saying on Clausen's apology, "That's good. I'm glad he apologized to Beeson. Beeson plays defense." Clausen refused to comment on Smith's comments, and from all accounts, did not issue an apology to Smith afterwards, seeing as Smith never brought up the matter afterwards, or even tried to downplay the potential controversy like last time. By this point, Smith was understandably fed up with Clausen. Not only was Clausen playing terribly, and not only was Clausen not getting the ball to him as much as he would have liked, but Clausen didn't even stop to think about apologizing to him or any of the other players on offense who were suffering and maybe losing out on bonuses because of him. There were some talks about Clausen and whether or not he had the maturity level to make it in the NFL. And let's just say that after this incident, you can see why. And for what it's worth, Clausen never started or played another game for the Panthers after the 2010 season. He was a one and done, and the team quickly moved on to Cam Newton with the first overall pick in the 2011 NFL Draft. The relationship between a wide receiver and his quarterback can be a rocky one for obvious reasons, seeing as the wide receiver's production and his potential money down the line are tied to how well his quarterback plays. But while some relationships can be patched up, it was very clear that this one, between Jimmy Clausen and Steve Smith, after this game against the Falcons, was way past the point of no return. Because while the Falcons were understandably flying high after this one, the Panthers, and the relationship between Jimmy Clausen and Steve Smith, were free-falling. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9. To see college football videos, subscribe to JaguarGator8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.